The views and opinions expressed on this station do not reflect the owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
It's it's Tuesday, the 23rd day of February 2021. Welcome to the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House, One Communications, and Lindos. I'm Jamal Hartman, along with Carla Zool. Thanks for making us part of your daily routine. If you're watching online, share the link. If you're on Facebook, start a watch party. If you're on Twitter, retweet it. If you're on channel 82, call someone and let them know it's on. Just get the conversation out there to your network. And don't forget to like and engage with us. Another good one today as the leader of Bermudians Against the Draft, Larry Marshall Sr. stops by. The Daily Play is a remember when. And so Carla has started to figure out my patterns, so she should not get this one wrong. Okay? Why?
Because yesterday Mark sent me a message. His name Mark, Mr. Phillips, and he was dying laughing at me. And he was like, "You said Tupac because I said Tupac." I was like, "I thought you were helping me."
Well,
cracking up.
I appreciate cousin Mark throwing you off like that. You know how that show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? And they would say, "Call a friend."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm thinking about your friends, Carla? They haven't been too helpful, and Mark let you down. It's like you got to do a better job of telling them you'll split that million with them. Something.
I'm telling you, I thought he was a friend. I told him, I was like, "You set me up," but it was all in good fun. So I'll get it right today.
Well, you eventually got it right yesterday with Malcolm X, but yeah, it is Tuesday, another show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are tuned in from. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support the Daily Hour, whether it be on social media through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and also the Full 100 radio station, where if you are unable to watch it, you can actually listen to it. Really, really appreciate our friends over at Channel 82. Crimson Multimedia, Lamar Woods and family, just love what they do. Consistent Bermudian talent on show. So please, if you have One Communications cable, make sure you're tuning in. If you don't have cable, you can go on to channel82.com or go on Channel 82 on Facebook, social media, and just watch some local content. Support some local content. We talk about buying Bermuda. Guess what? All it takes is a press play. Want to get into a conversation that was big on Twitter this weekend about Bermuda being boring, right? But before we even get there, what are considered natural disasters in the UK? Like, how in Bermuda, hurricanes, and in the northeast of the US, it's snowstorms. What is it in the UK? Rainstorm or something?
No, pubs closing.
Sounds about right.
No, seriously, people are dying. I would say it was a lot of flooding lately because we had a lot of rain, like a lot more than usual. But that's a good question. In Manchester, don't know, because we're not close to the sea as such. We're like down in the south, they're close to the ocean. So hurricanes are prevalent down there, but I have no idea besides pubs closing. Like, I was serious.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I was just thinking about the US and everything that the people in Texas were going through. And I'm just like, man, regardless of where you live in the United States, right? On the West Coast, you got to deal with earthquakes. The Midwest, the Southern Midwest, tornadoes. The Northern Midwest, snowstorms. Northeast, snowstorms. The Southern East, like Southeast, you've got hurricanes, snowstorms, and then like the South, along the South, like the Gulf and Atlantic, you've got hurricanes. Like you literally cannot escape Mother Nature. Here, I know in other parts of the world, you have dust storms and tsunamis and so on. And I just wonder, like, where's a place you can legit avoid nature? And there's no place. You really cannot avoid the wrath of nature. It's interesting. But when I get into the conversation, it was really hot topic. And when I say share the link, I mean it with this one because this is the most Bermudian conversation we've probably had in a while. And I want to address, people were going back and forth on Twitter this weekend about Bermuda being boring, right? And Bermuda's whack and so on. And, people got in their feelings about it. And I understand both sides. One of the things that some people say, it always seems Bermudians who live outside of Bermuda appreciate it more. I'm like, well, that's not just Bermudians. You ever met a Jamaican in New York or Jamaican in London? They think Jamaica's the best thing, but yet they're not living in Jamaica. So I think that's a norm for most people when they're outside of their home country, right? But so many people within Bermuda that you come across on social media think it's boring, it's whack, it's nothing to do. Well, before I even get into that and ask people their opinions, I've had the privilege of living, and I'll just go down the line: Huntsville, Alabama; Providence, Rhode Island; outside of Boston and Massachusetts; New Jersey; New York City; Queens, and Brooklyn; now in South Florida. And I can honestly say I had visited almost all of these places before living in them. And there's a big difference between visiting and having fun and finding things to do versus living there. The only place I can say I've lived where it was always something to do was obviously New York City, right? When I think of South Florida, if it's daytime and you've got to, you're looking to go on a beach or chill, if that's your thing, then you're always gonna. But that's some things you can do in Bermuda depending on the time of year, right? But I think we have to put in context different destinations and places. If you live some of these places that you love to vacation, you may have a different perspective as well. But the question of the morning to everyone, is Bermuda boring?
I saw the discussion, and living outside of Bermuda, living in the UK, I remember when I was younger. I remember shops used to close in Bermuda at 5 and didn't open on Sundays or what have you. So I thought the rest of the world was just so far ahead of Bermuda. Now, living in the modern day UK, you have shops that close pre-pandemic before shops close in Bermuda. So it gives you an idea of we're not so behind. Boring. I love sports. So I played softball all year round when softball was in season. So I never found Bermuda boring. I think it depends on what you're into. There are so many things to discover in Bermuda if you just open up your mind. No, it's not lights and glamour like in New York, for example. But I never ever found Bermuda boring. Ever.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I can understand and appreciate anyone who says it's boring, and I can understand and appreciate anyone who says it's not boring. I think what you just explained, Carl, it's where do your interests lie? Your interests lied in softball, so you always found something to do. If someone's an artist, for instance, they may not feel like there's enough for them to do. They may not feel like there's anywhere for me to express myself as an artist here. If someone's a musician, they may feel like, well, I'm not a church person, but the only place I can go to play music every week is church and play the drums, play the piano or sing. So, I mean, for me in particular, um, all I did, and this is just being honest, I did coach and I mentored. That's what I spent my time doing. To be honest, I've spent all but 3 years of my adulthood outside of Bermuda. Right, I left Bermuda in 2001, returned 2007 to 2010. So I've legit spent almost all of my adulthood outside 3 years outside of Bermuda. What did I do in those 3 years? I worked full time. I mentored and coached. But outside of that, all I did was go to a bar and drink. That's just me being honest. Well, sorry. The most important part of what I did, Mr. Marshall's here. I shouldn't be acting like it didn't matter, but we fought the government with Bermudians against the draft. So, I mean, that's what I did. That's how I spent my time. Now, you asked me what I did in New York City. Well, we did go to Broadway shows every now and then. We did, we would get on a train and go any time of night, find something to do. It was always something to do. right now, I mean, obviously the pandemic over the last year or so. So what do I do now? Come home and I get to work on editing this show and doing different stuff like that. Would I be doing anything differently in Bermuda? No, I probably won't. I probably won't.
And it's contextual as well because it depends on how old you are. Like you talked about drinking, going to the bars. I loved doing that when I was a bit younger. Even
Mhm,
here in Manchester, is so many different things to do. I've lived here 4 years and maybe been outside of the pub I worked at. I've maybe been to a bar twice.
mhm,
So, I would never, I think there's a lack of variation of
mhm.
things to do, but then space. Like I could go kart and paintball and all of that. But I would never call Bermuda boring. I mean, to me, I get pleasure sitting by the water and watching, the sunrise or sunset. Like that's entertainment to me, but
I want to go
depends
back to
on
a point you made earlier, because it wasn't until I worked in Bermuda tourism that you actually realized how many different things that I've never done that I can do. Like go to the what's the National Museum of Bermuda, it's called, former Maritime Museum. Just Bermuda history includes the Portuguese, the West Indians, all of that stuff. Um, it may not be every Bermudian's favorite thing, the tea at the perfumery, like just different things. And I'm not by any chance trying to promote anyone or anything here. You have Rashida Godwin doing her tours. You just have so many different things. There was Chew Stick at the time, right? Let's go through some comments. Elizabeth says, "Don't get me started, Carla." Um, Terry, Carla.
I don't think Bermuda is boring. There can definitely be something for you to do depending on what you're into.
Yeah. She also says, "I've lived in Atlanta, and to Jamel's point, is different visiting versus living there. I used to tire of taking my friends' family to Lenox Mall when they came to visit." Good point. Terry also says, "That's not to say Atlanta was boring, but it's definitely a different experience, and I still didn't do everything I wanted to do in that city." Daniel J. Woods, Carla.
Bermuda's what you make it. Depends on your friend circle, budget, and planned activities, in my opinion, but to each their own.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying Bermuda is what you make it, but I do agree with it does depend on your circle, budget, planned activities, and so on. What we make it, hmm, I'm still not sure that, and I think, keep it in context of what this show is, the conversation is going to be about with Mr. Marshall. I'm not quite sure if it's what you make it if you don't fully control your free time and you know, yeah. I get the point. I'm not quite sure I totally agree, but I do agree with, your circle, your budget, and your planned activities really do depend on how you're going to enjoy yourself. Rick Olson, Carla.
Nightclubs have disappeared, entertainment in hotels greatly reduced, very little entertainment in pubs, all pre-COVID, after hours establishments decreased. And it's funny he says that because I was going to say the latest I've stayed out in Bermuda is like 7 in the morning. So you can't even say like things closed earlier, but that was in the 90s, going ambassadors and stuff like that. Like you could party till you drop. So
Sounds illegal. Um, but
probably was.
to his point, I did leave out something. Robert Edwards and Jamie, I believe his name was, they used to play at Hamilton Princess every Saturday. So that was actually my out and live band, going and watching Robert Edwards and Jamie play. That was something I did during my time in Bermuda. I loved live bands. So you would catch me at Hamilton Princess supporting those brothers. Elizabeth, Carla.
It's one thing to be frustrated at the lack of opportunity here. It's another to be a full out hater. If people absolutely hate it here, make it happen somewhere else if it's that bad. Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
saw that in that comment that riled people, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to answer this. I'm going to answer this. A full out hater. It's people absolutely hate it here. Make it happen somewhere else if it's that bad. It's tough because while I understand and I appreciate what you're saying, um, and I'm going to use myself. I'll read to you what I said to Carla and Jackie privately the other day regarding this. Right. I grew up in Bermuda. All but 3 years, as I stated, of my childhood have been spent outside of Bermuda. I have every right to hate Bermuda for various things. Do I miss Bermuda? Spending time with my family and friends? Yes. But I love, and I mean absolutely love, being able to go places on a daily basis, not seeing the same people, being around the same people, and having to worry about just different people in my business. So, yes, while I think it's a bit hypocritical in the statements being made by certain people, I can relate to it. I haven't just lived outside of Bermuda. I've been lucky enough to work at the highest level in two industries outside of Bermuda, experiencing things that Bermuda could never offer me. Is that Bermuda's fault? Probably not. Well, absolutely not. But I know that I wouldn't have had these same opportunities had I remained in Bermuda. So that said, I appreciate Bermuda because without it, I would not be who or where I am. And despite the challenges that I've had with the governments of Bermuda, it has shaped me and it also has driven me to want to give back to the very people in the country, if nothing else.
But this is the difference there. To Liz's point, you aren't dogging out Bermuda. Like even as I live outside of Bermuda as well, as much as I said this to you guys privately, I don't like Bermuda. It doesn't represent happiness to me, but I
Mm.
love my country. And you would never hear me dogging out Bermuda. I think sometimes people dog out the country, and I just think like, that's a bit much. But I got her point in the context of if someone keeps glorifying that someone is somewhere is so much better and you have an opportunity to go, then why don't you go? I totally got what she was saying.
No,
But you give back. It's a difference.
yeah, I take what you're saying. I definitely take what Liz is saying. I'm simply saying that those same people use the same argument against myself, especially when I'm critical of the government. They use that argument against me, and that's where I'm coming from with it. Like there are people that, well, you don't even live here. Or, we get it all the time. So
Dry
that
statement.
that's it. Absolutely, I agree with you. Absolutely.
Tell me more.
Dr. Dr. Seaman says, the past year I've had to drive parents around. I now know that Bermuda has more than I ever thought. Just a drive. Terry says, Elizabeth, that lack of opportunity is why I stayed overseas as long as I could. Probably wouldn't have come back if it wasn't for you know who. We don't say that name in public in media anymore. Janet Maynard says, I agree, Carla. What is your interest? I have also enjoyed Bermuda. Judith R. Parsons, no, 100 depends on the interest. Maybe people need to create the space they long for. I agree. Rick Olson says, if you have a boat, we are fun. And Elizabeth says, your
Lucky.
experience differs from most people that sit here and complain. And Linda Bell, before we go to the news break, good morning, Bermuda is beautiful. I lived in other countries and now I am home. Bermuda is so beautiful. Ask any tourist. On that note, any final words on that before we go to the news, Carla?
Every time I come home, I just absorb. I see a prettier flower. I just think we just need to be appreciative. It is a beautiful country. It's what you make it.
Yeah, I'll say this much. Bermuda, I mean, the opportunities are there. Can Bermuda do better? Yes. But I mean, like I said, I've had the privilege to live in many cities, and every one of them offers something different. Bermuda is really no different from some of the cities outside of probably New York. All right, Carla, on to you for the news. Don't forget, we have a conversation you all don't want to miss. You hear about the LGBTQ plus, I think that's all the letters. You hear about social justice Bermuda. We're talking with Larry Marshall Sr. about the cause that nobody wanted to hear about. Conscription. We'll be back after the news.
Around 9:55 p.m. on Saturday, police received information that two men wearing all black clothing were repeatedly seen riding around the area of Harlem Heights Road in Hamilton Parish on a black motorcycle. A resident is said to have approached the individuals and inquired as to their presence in the area when the rider reportedly moved his hand towards his waistband. The resident then ran off. Officers made checks of a number of locations in Hamilton Parish, including Birchall's Cove, Cottage Hill Road, and Harlem Heights, in search of the suspects, but without success. Meanwhile, an off-duty police officer reported that just after 2:40 p.m. on Sunday, he was approached by a member of the public who handed him a live bullet. It is believed that the bullet was found in the Harlem Heights area of Hamilton Parish. On-duty officers recovered the bullet, which will be forensically processed. More knowledge about dementia could help stop people from suffering in silence, the Minister of Social Development and Seniors has said. Tanae Furbit appealed to members of the public after the launch of a campaign to boost support for people affected by the condition. She said, "Our last census in 2010 documented that 200 people were living with dementia. However, since then, Action on Alzheimer's and Dementia in Bermuda, an organization that works closely with this population, estimates that 2,000 people are living with dementia on the island." And that story was courtesy of the Royal Gazette. Turning to international news, Donald Trump earned up to $1.6 billion during his 4 years as U.S. president, according to a government watchdog. The Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, called CREW, say they have reviewed the former president's financial disclosures and claim he disclosed at least $1.6 billion in revenue from the Trump Organization and other outside sources between 2016 and 2020. The group says Mr. Trump did donate his official salary, funded by U.S. taxpayers. The revenue he earned during his presidency still proved to be lucrative. CREW calculated that even after seeing a major drop-off in hospitality-related revenue in 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic, Mr. Trump's businesses still managed to rake in a 10-figure income. The addition of mashed ripe bananas to a cake-like batter is what gives banana bread its distinctive taste and moistness. What better opportunity to enjoy a slice with a cup of tea or coffee than on Banana Bread Day? Banana bread first started to become popular back in the 1930s during the Great Depression. Cultural historians suggest that resourceful and creative housewives of the era created the recipe as a way of not wasting overripe bananas. In fact, the riper the banana, the better the taste of the banana bread. So it ended up being a very clever creation. It is traditionally known as a quick bread, but is actually more like a cake in both texture and flavor. So enjoy. Turning to weather, the temperature in Bermuda is expected to reach a high of 69 today. Atlanta, Georgia will see a high of 68, and Manchester, UK, a high of 56. And don't forget to tune in to the full100radio.com tonight for Nighttime Jams, featuring some of your favorite romantic classics. That's your Daily Hour news break.
I just needed an excuse to get me some banana bread today, and I got it. Banana bread day, look, I love banana bread. Like,
you put nuts in it? You're gonna say no, walnuts in it?
No, I eat it with nuts in it, but I don't put anything in it because I don't make it. I just eat it. So I'm eating. If it's banana bread, I'm getting in there. We're gonna take a quick break. Banana bread. Thank you for that, caller. Sometimes you just bring this valuable information. It's probably not good for my gut, but I'm gonna take it. Look, actually, bananas are a fruit, right? So carrot cake's a vegetable. These are not bad things, actually. So no, thank you, caller. Thank you. I appreciate you. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back with Larry Marshall Sr. We're talking about the cost of the cause. Bermudians Against the Draft. Stick with us.
Good day, Medical House, Doris speaking. Can I help you?
Medical House is Bermuda's leading one-stop shop for healthcare.
I found myself being a caregiver. Even though I was a nurse, I still needed help on, what was available in hospital beds and all that kind of equipment, and I knew where to go. I went to Medical House.
Bermuda's top doctors, dentists, care homes, and the hospital choose Medical House for a wide range of products. These same professional quality products are available to you for home health care.
I was very pleased with Medical House and the help they gave me when I most needed it.
Your experience with Medical House is about getting your needs met, but we also try to provide knowledge to help you through whatever you're experiencing.
Medical House is on Millreach Lane in Pembroke, where there's private parking right outside the door.
I would recommend them to anybody.
Call or visit Medical House today.
This month, we're featuring a range of infant and baby care products from Hello Bello, a company started up by a husband and wife team who were inspired to meet the challenges arising from the often surprising, not to mention messy experiences that came with the territory known as parenting. The couple behind Hello Bello know that being a parent is uniquely demanding, and their mission is to bring you premium products at gentle prices. Try Hello Bello Alpha diapers in a range of sizes, Alpha Blossom baby lotion, baby powder, and much more. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
Welcome back to the big show. Carl Azul. I'm Jamal Hartman. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by Medical House One Communications, Lindo's, and our friends over at Channel 82, where you can also watch this and many other locally produced shows if you have One Communications cable. As promised, we are going to be discussing the cost of the cause. Larry Marshall Sr. from Bermudians Against the Draft. Let's bring Mr. Marshall into the conversation. Welcome to the show, Mr. Marshall.
Yes, good morning, Jamal. Good morning, Carla.
Hi, Mr. Marshall.
Look at her being all nice. She must not have been a fan of Bermudians Against the Draft, trying to get us on her good side, right, Marshall?
No, she was straight. She was.
Thank you.
I knew everybody who was for us and everybody who was against us.
Oh, they don't know about the Notebook, Marshall. They don't know about the Notebook.
Yeah. Just straight.
She's okay. But look, let's get into the conversation. A lot to discuss, so short a time, but a lot of people don't know what inspired the fight to end conscription. Speak to us about how it came about and what made you take on, be that parent, that father to take on this responsibility.
Full credit to my oldest son, Larry Jr., because he stood up to me when I was being ignorant, and I did not appreciate the egregious human rights violations perpetuated by that most corrupt institution we know as the Bermuda Regiment, man. I, like a lot of people, you just didn't know. They are very clever and cunning at covering up what goes on up there. And I thank God for my two sons, my adopted son, that will be Jamal Hartman, and how it all worked out, because you had been up there for a short period and you stressed to Larry that he didn't want to go up there, man. Mm-hmm. And we had a couple of conversations, and he said that he didn't want to go up there. And the turning point for me was when my Christian principles were being compromised because of my ignorance, man. And Burp got right in my face. And as the first and only time he got in my face. And he better not do it again, right? But I made the stupid comment. I said, look, man, just go up there. You might like it. And his response was, I might like it, Dad? People cursing you to your face all day, and I might like it? And I realized at that point how foolish I was being. And again, I did not know the extent of abuse perpetuated by that institution, right? And that's when I said, okay, all right, what are we gonna do? You say you want to fight. We have to have a plan. And at that time, a very good friend of mine who was instrumental in laying the foundation for Bermudians, what became known as Bermudians Against the Draft, was Corin Smith. And Larry said, look, let's meet with Corin. And we did. And I appreciate the confidence that Corin had. And basically, he knew a lot because he was a lieutenant up there. And unfortunately, leading up to the tribunal, Corin did not feel strong enough to represent Larry. So I did. And it went from there that we went before and I say tribunal, Um, it was a kangaroo court. They had a former major, Randall Hollis, who chaired the tribunal. So from the outset, you know how ridiculously biased that kangaroo court was. We went in, I think it was October 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 months later, when I was watching the news and these guys were getting pushed to the ground and people up there laughing outside of Warrior Camp. And I said to Burp, "Are you ready?" And he said, "We're ready." And we started Bermudians Against the Draft. We went round to the Gazette. And at that time, Burp was only 23 years old, man.
Mm-hmm.
And he stood up. And I would say in the first week, I made more enemies than I had made in my entire life. But that comes with the territory, because when you're dealing with cowardliness, you're dealing with backwardness, you're dealing with selfishness, you're dealing with laziness. When it comes to human rights, that's to be expected, right?
Well,
And
I want to go back to something. It's two things you said that really stood out. Your faith, right, drove you to do this.
yeah.
I want to touch on that and your family, because
Yes.
Larry Jr. was only 23. But to your faith, I'll ask two questions in one. How did it make you feel knowing that so many other religious leaders in Bermuda to this day have remained silent on this matter? That's the first part of the question. And the second part, speak about the impact that this cause actually had on yourself and your family, because your sons were actually very young at the time.
Yes. The first question, I think that it's a sad indictment on the churches in Bermuda that you could have an institution that has brought immense suffering to an innumerable amount of young men and their parents over the last 50 years. An institution that's guilty of emotional, physical, and even sexual abuse. Glenn Brangman got convicted of 4 counts of sexual assault against a teenager. The stuff that we brought out in that November 2011 court case. All of that, and for the people of God to remain silent when one of their pastors is out there fighting, I think that's a scathing indictment on the churches, man. And I've seen so many of them who criticize me, or he shouldn't be fighting against government. But when it came to pathway to status, they're up there marching. When it came to gay marriage, they're up there marching. But when it comes to abolishing forced cheap labor, which by design disproportionately impacts our young Black males, they go quiet, right? That's your first question. The second question, the impact that this has had on my family. And you can remember, Jamal, I think 3 years ago, you had asked me to come on your show. And it's taken that long for me to come on, because it's so difficult rehashing what we've been through as a family. And when I say family, I'm talking about, of course, my 2 sons, but I also want to say the toll that it's taken on my wife as well, because I'm so appreciative of her and how she supported me through prayer. She supported me through console, and she had to listen to me every day talking about what was going on. For myself, in 2007, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, and my readings were like the systolic was 204/100. 103. And anybody that knows high blood pressure realizes and appreciates that stroke territory. And that was when we had first started fighting.
Right.
And I want to say too that I appreciate the topic this morning, because like you said, the cost for fighting the cause. And the point I want to make is the reason why it cost my family and you so much was because a Black government fought us tooth and nail all the way to the Privy Council, man. And history will record that the PLP not only adopted the most ridiculous position, but they entrenched themselves in it, man. And people ask me, or say to me, well, I didn't like the way you guys did things, man. And I said, explain. I said, well, you went to the press. So I said, I went to the press because in 2006, on 3 occasions, I asked then Premier Alex Scott for a meeting through Patrice Miners. On each occasion, he denied my request. And let me say that he is, like all of them, most hypocritical when it comes to conscription. He made a statement to the effect that parents would do well to take their sons and their daughters up to war camp. Neither his son nor his daughter went up to war camp. As a matter of fact, when he made that statement, his son Lawrence was serving in St. John's Ambulance Brigade, avoiding the regiment. That's hypocrisy to me. And I'm not biting my tongue on that one, right? 2007, and Hewitt Brown became premier. And at that time, I had the highest respect for Premier Brown. I do not anymore. I had the highest respect. And when I explained to people that July 2007, I met with the premier and he made arrangements for conscription to be abolished, and he didn't follow through. He could not have been more dismissive and less sympathetic to my family and you. He showed no mercy when you and Lamont were on that hunger strike in 2010. He showed no mercy, but he never thought 10 years later he would be in the courts
in the same exact position, fighting
for his freedom, like you guys were fighting for your freedom. And the same sympathy he had for my sons and you, that's the same sympathy I have for him. Okay.
There you go.
And so that's the first 2 premiers. And then you had Paula Cox, who entrenched herself in that most ridiculous position to support. This is a law put in place. Conscription was put in place by a white government in 1965 to maintain the status quo at the expense of human rights, primarily of young Black men. That's what they fought.
Oh, Mr. Miles, let me jump in. I want to say this because I think a lot of letters that were written, and I'm going to use David Chapman, Dr. David Chapman. He would consistently write letters at times, and he would focus on the colonial aspect. What I want people to really understand today, and you can ask your question, but I just want to say this, Carla. When the PLP became government in 1998, David Birch, I don't use the term colonel, I just cannot understand how a man who is so anti-colonial has accepted every title that Britain has given him. But David Birch was her purse handler, her assistant, her helper, whatever. It was under the PLP, if you remember, and tell me if I'm mistaken, right? Your name would go in the paper to go be conscripted and go to the regiment. Previously, if you didn't go, you were Pretty much. Cool. It was the PLP that actually made it harder. Once your name was in the paper,
Yes.
now they had the powers to arrest you. So what people need to understand about this is we always talk about, oh, turned on the black government and turned on black people. It was this black government, these black people that claimed civil rights and social justice and equality. They're the ones that made an already discriminatory practice even worse. So before we sit back and act like these people are going at this black party, you better understand and believe that this black party was detrimental to the development of black men. And before anyone goes and says, well, the regiment done so much for so many people, let's go back to what Mr. Marshall said earlier. The amount of pain that it's caused so many. We so easily turned a blind eye to the sexual assaults.
Yes.
We so easily turned a blind eye to the physical assaults in this place. Why? Because the indoctrination that has taken place over the years has made people believe that this was in the best interest of who? Black men. Why? Because the idea that has been created in the heads of so many in a colonial place like Bermuda is that black men are the biggest threat, even though black men wield no power. We are the biggest threat. Sorry, Carla, go ahead.
No worries. Mr. Marshall, so the government ended conscription in June of 2018, but you guys, BED still has, or had, I know you're paying it down, this massive legal bill. Some have said that the government owes your group reparations. What do you say to that?
Well, I have never said that. I've heard, I know Jamal has said it, and privately, him and I met with the then Minister of National Security, Van Keynes, and we were not pleased at all with that meeting because to me, the objective of the PLP is to rewrite history. And one way you rewrite history is to ignore just how terrible conscription actually was, man. And that's right on the lines of, for centuries in Bermuda, right up into the 60s and 70s, the narrative being spun by whites in Bermuda. And this will sound ridiculous, but their thing was, slavery was benign in Bermuda. That's the narrative that was spun. And then, it was exposed as being totally ridiculous. But that's the same playbook that the PLP are operating under. And yes, I do think that they should compensate us because we were right. And that same Minister of National Security at the time, Van Keynes, at the end of the debate on July 22nd, 2018, when they had finished discussing the Conscription Act, he said that today, this day, Bermudians against the draft stand vindicated in this house. So that means we were right. And if they were wrong, and it caused, because you were wrong and you entrenched yourself in a wrong position, you cost a family $400,000 plus, and we're still paying off that bill 16 years later. Every month, we pay $2,100 to pay off our legal bill, and we've got about another 9 years left. So you're talking about a lot of money. Jamal has paid about $30,000 out of his pocket, right? So you should do the right thing, and they won't. But before I go on to that, let me just, you're talking about the impact on my family, because I wanna share like what Lamont Marshall, along with Jamal and myself, we were the ones arrested. And Lamont was arrested several times, and he has been to criminal court over 10 times. That's apart from the civil case, criminal court. And the only reason they stopped, because our lawyer, I appreciate Eugene Johnston, thank God for him. A lot of work he done pro bono because he knew what it was, the financial strain my family was under. Eugene wiped the floor with the regiment's lawyer, and they never came back, and that was September 2014. But back up to 2012, Lamont, he had went to Iten in Kenya to train, a 6-week training camp at altitude. And this was a young man. He was 26, 27 at the time, and he was preparing for the Olympics, man. And he was with a group. And when I say world class, 5 months later, Teofik McLuffy won the gold medal at the 2012 Olympic Games. That's the group that Lamont was training with. And they were so impressed with his talent and his work ethic, they wanted him to go on tour. He could not go on tour because he had to come back and fight the Progressive Labor Party government and the regiment. And that was his window of opportunity lost. Okay. He came back, they arrested him, and they never stopped arresting my son until we won an injunction.
So, Mr. Marshall, because you talk about the cost of the cause, right? I read an article recently where in 2012 you had been arrested, and then it basically came out of emotion. One of your sons was being the regiment came to get one of your sons, but at the end of it all, you got an absolute discharge. My question is this for people out there who are so quick to adopt a cause, whatever it may be, if you want to take on a cause, what should you be willing to do? How far should you be willing to go? Because some people think it just starts at saying something and ends there. Do you think that people realize what the true cost can ultimately be?
Well, I think the level of cowardliness in this country is astonishing, man. Because Martin Luther King said that vanity asks the question, is it popular? Politics asks the question, is it expedient? Cowardliness asks the question, is safe? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And for most Bermudians, we don't get past that first question. If it's not popular, they're not gonna support it. If it's not politically expedient, then everybody just runs to the corner. And if it takes courage, if it takes guts, look, I've seen people go on Facebook talking about Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, and they went up the regiment when we were fighting conscription. And I'm like, are you serious? You didn't even have the guts after the groundwork was laid by Bermudians against the draft. You didn't even have the guts to fight against conscription, and now you're talking about Martin Luther King. Look, to answer your question, you have to have conviction. And it was many low moments. It was many sleepless nights, many tears. And it was like every time somebody got arrested in our group, they were calling me, and I was going upset BM. I was calling up the regiment, and people ask, okay, what keeps you going? Well, I'm right. We are right. We are our fight, our struggle was the most important human rights fight in Bermuda in over 50 years.
So, Mr. Marshall, sorry, because we're running out of time. Last question, because I just think, so much to offer. What was the most disappointing part of your experience to end conscription?
It's been so many disappointing parts. Like I said, the lack of support, not just from the churches who should have known better, but the so-called human rights groups like Human Rights Commission. I called Rhonda and told the guy what we were doing, and his ridiculous response was, oh, it's the law. Amnesty International, Center for Justice, they all kept quiet for one reason or the other. But these same people, when it comes to gay rights, they're 100% behind those groups. but they always made an excuse as to why they couldn't support us.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you there because you're transitioning into something. Since Bermudians Against, because right now everything you're saying, this needs to be asked and this needs to be discussed. Since Bermudians Against the Draft, we've seen activism somewhat come alive in Bermuda, right?
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus, fighting for marriage, social justice Bermuda is now around. How does it make you feel seeing these groups fight for what they deem justice, yet with Bermudians Against the Draft, it seems like we were on our own. All of a sudden, people know what justice is. Furthermore, just because conscription was ended, as I've stated many times, there's still no reparations. So where are these groups? If it's about social justice, where are they on behalf of Bermudians Against the Draft? How does it make you feel when you see this stuff?
Well, again, it comes with the territory. And I think you and I have so many lengthy conversations where we're venting and lamenting about the hypocrisy of so many of these so-called social justice movements, man. And that quote from Malcolm X yesterday, that you can't be so blind with patriotism that you can't see reality. Wrong is wrong no matter who does it. And unfortunately, you have groups that form under the pretense of being a social justice group that will never criticize a Black government, man. And that's to me disqualifies them. And that's what it comes down to, that they're not going to criticize a Black government, irrespective of how wrong they are. So I'm not surprised, and I think that's one of the reasons why the plight of Black people in Bermuda at this particular point in time is at an all-time low. People just are disinclined to say that wrong is wrong because of who's doing it. And Bermuda's being taken away from us, and we don't even know it, man. I mean, we're being pushed out. I mean, interesting thing that the same thing that Michael Fahey was saying is now being said by Jason Hayward. And they almost had a riot with pathways to status. And now they're implementing the same thing. It's sad. And it goes back to where you did not support a just cause. And I stand on that. I stand that we fought a just cause. Conscription was a most egregious violation of so many human rights. And Jamal, what I would like to do, I know I should have discussed this with you before, but if I'm overstepping my bond, just say so. But look, I would say, challenge your viewers, go to our Constitution and see how many human rights are violated from a constitutional perspective, and they will be astonished. And I would throw in a fish sandwich and French fries for the person who gets the right answer. No, I'm saying no, 2 fish sandwiches, for the person. If they can come up with the correct answer,
I'm getting answer.
I'm saying, and it will be astonishing, right? And like I said, okay, let's do it this way. One for a guy, one for a girl. Whoever comes up with it first, because I'm not giving out. The first 2 people, male and female, who come up with the right answer, go to the Constitution, and you will be astonished at how many of those 13 fundamental human rights and individual freedoms were violated by conscription. And I think that would encapsulate just how right we were. And how wrong the PLP were, and that's our Constitution. It's not my opinion. It's not Jamal's opinion. So I would just make that suggestion.
And I want to jump in there. And the late Walton Brown, him and I had many conversations. We were friends. We weren't friends. We spoke. We didn't speak. One of the things that we always went at it about was that very thing, because the Constitution pretty much makes it clear that pretty much slavery is wrong, except for
Yeah.
that it pretty much says that. And Bermudians, again, there was what got me is the ignorance of it all. And it's okay to be ignorant. The thing with ignorance is be willing to be educated. But so many people don't even comprehend what slavery is. So when you say, well, conscription is the closest thing to slavery, oh no, it's not, this is it. And it's just, I mean, I remember Dr. Ewart Brown, my respect level went so low for him when I actually had him on, and he said that. And then there were numerous others, like I'll just say it, there were a bunch of alpha brothers, and I was just like, wow, like how can these black guys that are like they don't get it? So over the years, over time, I just lost so much respect for so many people, because you realize, hold on. And this is how I look at social justice. We are running out of time, but I look at social justice like this. And Dr. King said it, you know, I recently said it in the article that I was featured. But if you're not willing to risk pretty much all you have for the cause, you really don't believe in your cause that much. And I say that because we're talking about Larry Marshall Jr., who pretty much risked furthering his education.
I didn't even get to, I didn't even get to Brett.
Oh, we have a lot more to discuss, and I just want to let people know, yes, I see people saying that we are going to do a series on this so that people get these stories. So Mr. Marshall and I, due to my partner Shanta saying we need to do a series, we're going to do a series on this so that we can really connect and get the information out. But the impact is just so deep. Mr. Marshall, we are out of time. Thank you so much for doing this. We didn't even get to the audience, but you are appreciated. And we'll be in touch to discuss this series and definitely let the audience know when it's available. But it's so much. When I say it's so much, I don't think the audience understands how much more. And I appreciate Carla mentioning you being arrested, because many people didn't know that. And I actually forgot. So thank you for that, Carla, because that kind of encapsulates this whole situation. It really does. So thanks again, Mr. Marshall. Anything you want to say?
Guys, God bless you guys. I really appreciate being on your show, Jamal and Carla.
Thank you so much. And tell your wife we said hello.
Will do.
And I'm collecting my sandwich regardless.
But don't forget, and I'm serious about if they can come up with the correct answer
for the Constitution.
How many rights were violated by a conscription? A fish sandwich and fries.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Thanks again to Mr. Marshall. We're going to take a quick break. We still have the Daily Play motivational, inspirational quote of the day. Don't go anywhere. Stick with us, folks. Stick with us if I can get you the commercial.
Bermuda, do you know the difference between internet and Wi-Fi? Don't worry, neither did I. Let me break it down to you. Internet is delivered to your modem, which then has to push the Wi-Fi signal into the rest of your home. Do you find that the further you're away from your modem, the weaker your Wi-Fi signal gets? That's because Bermuda's homes are built hurricane tough. It's really difficult for that Wi-Fi signal to reach every room. But you're in luck. Our One Home Wi-Fi solution guarantees Wi-Fi coverage in and around your home with the help of our Eero devices. Plug in the Eero around your home and it will create a mesh Wi-Fi network in every room. Check us out at One Today to sign up and make sure you can stream, work, and play from every corner of your home.
Welcome back to the big show. Thanks again to One Communications, Lindos, Medical House, every one of you who continue to support the show. And thank you to Larry Marshall Sr., the entire Marshall family for what they've given to Bermuda, which I don't truly believe has been appreciated yet or is going to be appreciated anytime soon. I want to go to Nikki Michelle's comment. Bermuda is in debt to y'all. Black Bermudians in particular, the current Black Bermudian government, whose children will be among those who benefit greatly from your sacrifice, need to be the first in line to pardon this debt. I would say so. Thank you, Nikki. I want to say this, and we'll get to the final words before we even do the Daily Play, but I haven't, I mean, Mr. Marshall and I, we don't talk as much anymore because he has grandbabies, the cutest little grandbabies, Chess and Mason. And one is about 7 months, Mason's 2. So he spends a lot of his time. Look at him. He don't even have the energy he used to have. They drain him now. He doesn't have to go on his bike like he used to, but he has his grandbabies. So we don't speak as much as we used to. But when we do, and we always end our conversation saying, man, we need to get this story out. Bermudians really do not know what we went through. And sometimes I don't always want to share everything. Obviously, I share stuff in, kind of excerpts. I'll share things. But if people truly knew what we went through, I think even more minds would shift to understand how wrong. And when you realize what the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party, labor government was protecting, you would understand where our irritation comes from. Daily playtime. Carla, very easy question. You know my pattern, so it's about Malcolm X. What year was Malcolm X assassinated? On February 21st of what year was Malcolm X assassinated? Help her out, folks. We're out of time.
It's either 63 or 64. It's one of those 2 years.
Oh, you are very close.
Because he died close to MLK. I remember that. 65?
You got it. Man, you are getting good at this game. Woo.
I need a suntan. Look how pale I am. Jeez.
I'm actually happy for you because you Carla of like last year might have said 1800 something, but thank you. You're getting better. You need some inspiration to send us off for the day, Carla. Wow,
we realize the importance of our voices only when we are silenced. Malala Yousafzai.
Wow, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but
I didn't either. I just tried.
I'm gonna learn to pronounce that name because that's such an important quote. Any final words, Carla?
I just have to say real quick. I remember back then, and I used to think, what was the big deal? And I was one of those people that would go up to the regiment and giggle to watch the boys being humiliated. And it's through you and this whole movement that I realized how ridiculous that was.
Indeed. Thanks again, like I said, to everyone who's supported Bermudians Against the Draft over the years, to the Marshall family for the sacrifices they've made, my mother and my family that was always supportive as well, and even to my family who I've almost forgiven, who still has not shown any true support to the movement. They literally go silent when we speak of it. It's okay. Your ignorance is okay, but stay where you are. Yeah, I'll leave it at that because woo. Yeah. Just want to say to the audience, I do apologize, but we will be sharing a series. Stick with us. And once we get some more information, I'll make that known. Thanks again to our partners, Medical House, One Communications, and Lindos for ensuring that we're able to do this with you. As always, we appreciate you. We love you. And we thank you for making us part of your daily routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you tomorrow. She's Carla Zool. I'm Jamal Hartman. Folks, go to www.thefull100radio.com and listen to some good music all day. I know I'm going to. Peace, Carla.
Romantic classics tonight, guys.
She's so nasty. We're out.